This is Social Leopards. I'm Bea.
And I'm Beth. A leopard is a solitary creature living in the jungle, but often not seen or noticed. Are you a solitary creature trying to navigate the social jungle?
This show explores loneliness and the many ways forward. Welcome to Social Leopards.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Beth.
And I'm Bea.
And this is Social Leopards. Today, this episode is inspired by a quote. If you know me, you know I'm all into inspirational quotes. Mary Engelbreit is the person that we're attributing this quote to. Hope I'm right, people. And it's a short one, but a good one. And it's, "Don't look back. You're not going that way." I thought about that quote for days, and it has stuck with me. And I have lots to say about it today.
And that reminds me of another quote from a very famous person, from Henry David Thoreau.
Oh, yeah.
"Never look back unless you are planning to go that way. Learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning."
That's a good one, too. And they're very relatable.
They really are.
Yeah. I love it.
We're very negative when we feel lonely because we're in that moment just feeling very lonely and everything is negative. We can't see any positive things about that. So we tell ourselves the experience is negative and our day is negative and everything around us is negative. So that's one thing that we do. And we've all been there. It's very frustrating. We all have days when we feel like nothing is going to go the right way because we're perceiving it so badly. We have to take pause and just rethink. And we also know that loneliness is an epidemic. We know that many people feel lonely, and much more so since we had the pandemic. We've had an increase in loneliness, and there's been we've talked about this in previous episodes. The suicide rate has gone up amongst a lot of people. And of course, as we said before, you are never alone. Everyone feels lonely. We hope that when we talk about these topics, that it gives you some peace and makes you realize that everyone goes through it and there are ways around it, and you won't feel lonely forever.
Yeah. I think along the lines of the negative thinking and the "don't look back because that's not the direction you're heading" quote, I think where I landed on this was I read an article about worrying and being anxious about things. And there are two scenarios that come into play. So the first one is you're worried about something either because it's a pattern that you can't break, or it's a voice that's telling you that you can't, or that you didn't do it well enough, which I know is a voice that lots of us hear, or whatever negative messaging that we're sharing with ourselves. And our focus is on seeking answers, and it's finding ways forward, okay? So a little bit of worry and a little bit of thinking is okay. But then there is also this focusing on the negative feelings so strongly and ruminating on that for so long and feeling bad about ourselves as a result and not really focusing on solving the problem. And I think that there's a line there, and that's when the worrying and the thinking about the negativity starts to become mentally unhealthy. So worry, as I said, is a normal, healthy strategy, and it can get us from point A to point B. It can help us learn lessons, and it can help us learn how to do better in the future, right? So the outcome of worrying is to make that plan and to self-correct or face the issue head on. If it's maybe a conversation that you had with somebody that didn't go as planned and you are pretty sure there's a misunderstanding somewhere.
It happens all the time.
Yes. And then you want to come back and it worries you because you don't know how the person's going to take it. But you can have that conversation, and then you can, with the goal of getting past it and moving forward. So that's just one little example. Or to make a commitment not to repeat something that you considered a personal mistake, right? Those are lessons learned and ways forward. But when you stop communicating, stop socializing, or unfriend somebody maybe even because all of your focus is about how you felt and what you internalized from that, or it turned into a can't or a won't, then that may not be the healthiest choice. And it's going to limit your ability to resolve the problem, to learn from it, to grow from it, and to mature as a human. Easy to say, right? But strategies on how to move forward, I think, are what most people want to hear. And I have a couple and you have a couple.
Yes.
So we're going to share them real quick. I think probably the hardest one, we're going to say that first, and that's forgiveness. Practice forgiveness to yourself first, for yourself. When you forgive someone else, it doesn't mean that you have to forget what happened. But if you resolve the reason to forgive within yourself, then you carry that compassion forward and you can move beyond the situation.
Yeah, that's a great one. It's a tough one.
It is.
But it's very important. We also I thought about another one, validity. I think you have to decide how valid the worries are and if they're the result of fearing the worst case scenario, because things are never as bad as we imagine them. So I think taking a breath and thinking about, is this really a valid worry, or am I just going too far beyond what is really happening right now?
I agree. I'm going to steal one of yours next. How about that? Reframing. Bea has talked about reframing the situation many times in past episodes, but when you spend too much time thinking about things in a negative space, turn it around inside your brain and your heart maybe even, and start thinking about ways to move toward positivity, towards better outcomes.
That's a great one. The other one I thought about was turn it down, shut it off, maybe change the subject in your brain, shut down the negative thoughts, remind yourself that worrying is normal, but it's not worth wasting another moment of your life worrying, because life is short. We can't change the past, and we can only be the best versions of ourselves going forward.
Yeah. When you start hearing that voice inside your head, do a full stop and start putting yourself in a different space along the lines of that reframing. I think one of the things that I think I hear myself say to myself sometimes when I make a mistake is, oh, that was so stupid. Why did I do that? And those responses are super common and they're super human, right? And most of all, you shouldn't even feel worse about yourself for having said them. But when you do recognize that in yourself, you have that opportunity to do that full stop. And you have that opportunity to go, wait, let's take a step back. Let's think about this.
Yeah.
Everybody makes similar mistakes. Everybody does things wrong. Everybody. Yeah. Instead of just me, and everything that I'm doing wrong. Remember that a lot of the things that happen in life are just human.
Yeah. And we think we tend to be so hard on ourselves as a society anyway, because we're forced to try to be perfect. And we feel so judged by everything. So I think also just giving ourselves the moment to relax and thinking about something to look forward to each day. That self-care piece and relaxation also helps a little bit with that worrying too. I think I forget about it every day. I think, okay, what am I doing today for myself? Or what am I going to do today for myself to just relax and really enjoy, just even for 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever time I have. I think that's really important.
Yep, I agree. Part of reframing is also positive self-talk. So replace the negative self-talk with the positive self-talk, right? And sometimes that feels a little goofy, right?
That reminds me of that Saturday Night Live episode years ago with the affirmations. Remember that? You are the best. You are enough. You are great.
And those are great affirmations in real life.
They
and
really
sometimes bringing that forward in a jokey sort of way is a way to start, right? Because it can feel very uncomfortable, especially if you're in that negative space and you're down on yourself and you're not feeling like your best self, or if self-love and self-acceptance are just difficult for you in general, it can sound a little goofy. Maybe start with something a little closer to neutral. In response, choose something like, oh, I did mess up, because that's what your brain is saying, right? And then put a but in front of it. But nobody is perfect. So it's okay for me to be imperfect too. I can think through this and I can try to solve it, or I can try to do something different or better or next time, right? So that's a way to start in order to start shifting that focus in your brain from that negative. And that, I think when people get frustrated, a lot of times the first thing is, I'm never going to go there again. I'm never going to do this again, or that's just not worth my time and energy because it just went so poorly this time. What if it doesn't go so poorly the next time? What if you make one little shift or one change and it goes better the next time? So the try again thing is
I like that one around.
right?
Yeah, you've got to keep trying it. That's a tough one too.
Yeah.
Because you're going to assume the worst, but yeah, keeping that motivation is important.
Yeah. And when you see other people exhibiting that kind of behavior, I know what I do. I have heard people say it out loud in situations, coworkers, sometimes a few of my friends, they'll start just talking negative about themselves. And I take that moment to stop them and let them know what I appreciate about them and tell them that I wish that they didn't feel that way. I try not to negate or make their feelings or how they're feeling. I don't want to say that it's wrong or don't feel that way. That's like the worst thing. I can remember so many times my mom getting frustrating and say, just stop doing that or stop feeling that way. Well, you can't just stop feeling that way, but acknowledging it in a gentle way and then saying, I wish that I could help you find a way forward, or how can I support you in this moment? Because I can see that you're feeling a little down and I'd like to make sure you know I am here for you. And those types of words can make so much difference in a person's day or their moment and sometimes their life. You never know how it will, that moment of compassion and that moment of understanding and actively listening to what somebody is saying and responding to them in kindness will make a true difference. I know when I'm having a bad day, that's the best way for me to feel better.
Yes, yep, yeah.
Yeah. And it's a skill. And just if you're really good with formulas in Excel, you have to have sometimes you have a talent and it becomes one to start reframing and rethinking and stopping yourself. So, yeah. So another issue that's hard for so many people who tend to also believe that they lack that strong skill set when it comes to being confident or comfortable in their own skin has to do with a feeling it's hard to control their emotions. So I want to take just a few minutes to talk about feeling negative and holding yourself back from things that keep you in that negative headspace and how to find strategies to reduce those roadblocks. So when you begin to feel emotional, take that moment and define the literal feeling that it is. Feeling upset isn't quite where you want to go.
That's funny you say that because we know when I do my behavior observations and my functional behavioral assessments, it's exactly what I'm doing. Describe what your child is doing or describe how you are feeling right now. Quantify it rather than make it, you have to make it more concrete. So very good point.
Right. And what does it do? It puts it in a box, right?
Correct.
Where you can start to feel objective about it.
Yes.
And so is it a sense of frustration? Do you feel left alone? I guess that would be like your abandonment feelings. And these are emotional wounds that might have deep-seated roots, right? So when you begin to understand that feeling and where it's coming from, you can start to look at it in a more detached way. And then that means you're on that first step to starting to find a way to heal it. So the second piece of this is how, and you just alluded to that, is how do you physically feel in that moment? Can you maybe give us an example of that?
Sure. And I'm thinking right now with what I'm going through with my parents, and, I have my moments when I get a little bit worried and I feel panic. I feel tightening my chest. I feel stomach pain because I'm just stressed out about like maybe the fear, the worry of what is going on. Is everything okay? And you talked about triggers, and I do have to stop, take a deep breath and think about what is triggering this feeling. Why am I feeling this way? Is this really a rational, valid feeling, or is this just my mind running away and catastrophizing?
Because those feelings are coming from your raw, like your lizard brain, right? I've heard TED talks about lizard brain, right?
Yes.
And
the limbic.
Yes. And sometimes when you start to feel triggered, that feeling isn't quantifiable. It just feels very urgent.
Right.
It feels
Right.
very much like an emergency happening.
Right.
It's up inside your brain.
Yes.
And it's not going to be reasonable or logical or calm. So it takes you to recognize that physical feeling
Mm-hmm.
that you are starting to experience and recognize it. And then that helps you do that full stop that we were talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
because then you can start to analyze it and you can start to go, wait, that's what this is. That's what this feels like. And so now I need to recognize that and realize that the sky is not falling right now at this minute. And I can think through this and I can calmly find my way forward.
Yep.
So now you've defined the feeling, right? And you know how it shows up in your body. So that is the trigger. And understanding how your past has influenced that trigger
That's
is
correct.
the important next step, right?
Yep.
And that will help you resolve or improve your reaction to it. So earlier we were talking about not overthinking or over worrying about it, because there's a difference, right? Are you trying to solve it? So that's like a good question to ask yourself. Am I trying to solve a problem right now, or am I just worrying to worry?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Because that's the thing. What can you solve right now and what is just worry? Yeah. Distinguishing between that is very important, because sometimes things are solvable. Sometimes they're not. We have to let them run their course and reassess.
When trauma from your past is part of that root cause of your trigger, you do start to react in a familiar pattern, right? Rather than challenging that pattern. And so that's where we're heading, right? And so you have to have ways to cope with that. And part of that is calming down. I think that many times one of the standard things to do is to journal those feelings. And when you can then later, when you're no longer feeling so much intense emotion, you can go back to what you wrote down while you were upset, and that helps you find perspective. So that's why that is a very strong therapeutic technique, because it will allow you, after some time passes, to be more objective about that. Challenging those triggers, let's talk a little bit about that. So challenging how you think about your triggers today, as opposed to how you have dealt with similar situations in the past, is an important step to making positive changes in your outlook and in your behaviors. So in the moment, taking that quick break may help to calm you. Go get a glass of water. Drink it slowly, right? I think you gave me
choke
that.
on it.
But you gave me that. You gave me that advice one day. I remember, like, before my mom had passed, you're like, you just need to go take a moment, go drink a cup of tea, go do something just to take your mind off of it. Taking a brief walk is another good one. Listening to a song that actually makes you smile.
I always like positive songs. I really have a hard time. We had that quick conversation just for fun. There are certain songs that make me feel sad, and I sometimes cannot listen to them because I do not want to be sad. So,
And the song that like fueled your sadness or fueled your anger later becomes maybe something different to you over
for
time.
sure.
And even just sitting still and listening to the sound of your breathing can be helpful. These things are also examples of self-care. They don't cost you anything. They take a small amount of your energy and your time, and it will act as a sort of a refresh to help you gain your composure and hopefully to help you not respond in a way that's going to make you even feel worse later.
The other thing that I want to add is sense of urgency. I think sometimes we misconstrue everything being something that has to be addressed now. We get a text or we do this, right? And that's another thing. We have to almost distinguish what is the thing that I have to do now, and what can I do later? So I think that's the other component of worry, that we start worrying about too many things at once and we start getting overwhelmed. So I think that we have to also decide what is really important right now. What can I leave for tomorrow or for later today?
I love that. Yes. Sometimes, especially if the troubles from your past sometimes feel overwhelming and difficult, a therapist might be your better choice to help you find ways to cope and make improvements over time. There are a lot of different types of therapy out there. They are not all traditional talk therapy with a psychiatrist. We are interested in all the different ways that people try to find help. And we've been talking to a number of these professionals and continue to on this show. And There are life coaches that are sometimes enough. There are relationship coaches when our difficulties are related to how we are interacting with friends and family. So there are so many options out there today, and so you have to find what's good for you. There's no one right answer. And as we are in this season 2, the perspectives season, we're talking to a lot of people, and it's opening my mind. And
Same.
yes, and I'm feeling like the opportunities are endless. Keep listening. And I know sometimes we tout ourselves as a loneliness podcast, but the feedback that we receive is that the loneliness is the end result rather than the actual problem. So that's why we're exploring so many of the reasons that kind of result in loneliness. So sometimes it's hard to identify that. So as we dig in and we keep talking to other people, and our guest hosts are going to be fabulous, and we already have the next season of guests all figured out. So there are so many interesting people to talk to. It's amazing. So as we share stories from others throughout this entire season, hopefully you will find ways to be more open to this self-care, this self-love, this acknowledgement, and hopefully be inspired to find your own personal way forward. In the summer months, my favorite way to de-stress and reboot is swimming.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I find that time in the water always lightens my mood, and it makes life feel more doable. So what's your go-to activity?
So someone I know shared this calm down exercise with me recently.
Oh.
It's pretty well known in certain circles, but I want to share it with you again today. It's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. So
All right, I'm ready.
Think of 5 things you can see.
Okay.
4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. I love chocolate. I just love chocolate. So by refocusing your mind on these simple things, it gives you a chance to reboot all 5 senses. That's why it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
And this essentially brings you back to basics, to your body, back to your body, and also it helps you reconnect with your whole self.
I love that. I am thinking through that in my head, and relaxation is the first word that comes to mind.
Okay.
I think that's the key, right?
Yeah.
And it also takes whatever started you from down that path of worry or anxiety, and it shuts it, does that, either turns it down or turns it off, right?
Yeah, I think it's like being, like another way of saying being present in the moment. Imagine we're sitting here in this room, we're looking at what are the 5 things in front of you, right now. What can you touch right now? What can you hear right now? So what can you smell? And then what can you taste? It's true. If I was imagine we were sitting in, I don't know, some cafe in Paris, we probably would be doing that. Would be exactly doing those things without realizing
espresso.
See?
Now I want an
and
espresso.
you'd be thinking about, I'm going to have espresso soon. What else do I see here? Oh, I see that croissant.
Yeah. Oh, chocolate croissant.
That's right.
There you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I feel it allows us to reconnect with ourselves to a certain extent.
It does, yes.
For that little moment. And then it's calming, right?
It is calming because I feel like we're so disconnected most of the day. I know I am. I'm not always like thinking about, even you go out to dinner sometimes with friends or with family, whatever, and maybe you're not even that hungry, but you're like eating anyway because we're going out. We're here and I'm not going to not eat, even though I probably don't need to. So because we're disconnected at that moment. We're not maybe relaxed. Maybe we've just come from a meeting or we've driven an hour to this restaurant or who knows. So we're not connected and then we're overeating. So that's a whole nother reason to reconnect and do that 5, 4. Next time I'm going to do that when I go out 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do I really want to eat now? It's probably going to be the same result though. So yeah.
Let's just walk through just some of the benefits of relaxation real quick.
Yes.
So one of them is a slower heart rate, which then lowers your blood pressure. That's another one.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, another one. Oh, better digestion.
There you go.
As we talked about,
We
better
just talked
control
about that.
over low blood sugar levels.
Right. And then is reduced stress hormone production, which is very good for our bodies.
Yes, and it helps release muscle tension, which can help deal with chronic pain.
Yes. And then, of course, there is the benefit of improving your mood and your ability to focus.
And then ultimately, you can boost your confidence to handle life's problems.
I love it. So being calm in the moment is just essential to finding your own personal comfort space, right? Like being able to get out there and socialize, making friends, and realizing that life can be enjoyable is the ultimate goal. Let's wrap up this little session with repeating our initial message that we started with from Ms. Engelbright. Don't look back, because you are not headed that way. The past, and when we dwell on the past, will lead to a frustration and a negative mindset. So when you identify and address your emotional triggers, you're able to de-escalate most of the time. And that's conducive to developing a stronger, more capable version of yourself. Positive reinforcement after a tough moment and then finding a way to relax will help reboot and refresh your system. Start again. You can do it.
Great. Love it.
All right. And with that, this ends this episode of Social Leopards. Talk to you next week.
Yeah, have a great week. Bye.
Hey, Social Leopards. Don't slink back into the jungle quite yet. We have 2 important messages to share. First, remember to like this episode, drop us a comment, and if you haven't done it yet, follow this show or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can reach us on social media. You can also email share@socialleopards.com to contact us privately. All links are in the show notes. We love and appreciate hearing from those who listen to the show.
Second, we want you to know that this show is not intended to be a replacement for professional therapy. If you are struggling or if you need to interact with another person, check out the show notes for resources. Thanks for listening.